Welcome back everyone to Breaking Stereotypes. I am your host, Domenica, and for today's episode, we're going to do a little catch up and we're going to be talking about nutrition. So I actually made a poll for the last time in regard of what you guys wanted to talk about, and it's so funny because this always happens. It went into a tie of between unhinged question or like Q&A and intuitive eating versus tracking calories, and it literally went 50-50. So I figured we're going to talk about the intuitive eating today, and we're going to go and catch up next week into the unhinged Q&A, which actually I want the questions to be asked by you guys. So to give it a little bit of a time for everyone to have like questions and everything set up, I decided to use that one for next week, and we're going to be talking all things about nutrition. I hope you're ready. So before we go into that, let's do a little catch up. Last week we went into our anniversary trip. We had a small little anniversary trip where we went to Upper Michigan and then we went to Minnesota for an NFL game. It was so fun, but I figured this was also why this is a perfect opportunity to talk about intuitive eating versus tracking calories, because during the time of us going to the trip, of course, my full intention or my full purpose was not to take my food scale and to track everything that I was eating, because of many reasons. Number one, because it was our anniversary trip, right? There's so much more to life than tracking calories, and for this trip I really wasn't focused on that specific in that specific layer of my life. So then I didn't, of course, take my food scale. We went camping, and if you have ever gone camping, you take like camping food, or you take food that is easy to cook and very, very quick. We ended up doing kind of scrambled eggs with veggies and stuff like that, because I made sure I packed stuff that we were able to eat for breakfast and that it was still somewhat aligned with what I usually eat, what I would want to have, and etc. But for example, on that camping day, our full intention was to go to eat dinner or lunch at a restaurant that we went there about 3 years ago, and they had this like bucket nachos where they literally put it in a bucket and the waiter would like come out and take the bucket out, and just all the nachos and the cheese, it was so perfect. So our full intention was to go to that restaurant to have the nachos and to have the food that they have there. Their burgers are really, really good. We haven't been there in over 3 years, and we were really, really excited to do that. So what are the things that I did? And I guess we could go right into the topic, because I'm gonna be talking a little bit of what happened in the trip, a little bit what I did, and then we're gonna go dive deep into more of the science between counting calories, macros, and stuff, and then going into the intuitive eating, which you're going to be able to see kind of somewhat in a way of what I did with intuitive eating for this trip, and for I would say about like half of last week. If you don't know yet, which you haven't, because I haven't mentioned it yet, you are able to view this podcast into YouTube, because I am doing both version for the YouTube and for the podcast. So let's have fun. Let's have some fun. Let's go into it. So as I mentioned, when we went into the traveling trip, like I made sure that I packed things that were going to be really good: vegetables, eggs. I grabbed some protein. I The options that we did have for protein were a little bit more fattier on they were fattier than regularly, so I did make sure that I was a little bit cautious of the amount of protein that I was using for this, because I didn't want it to be too heavy on fat either. And what I did was follow my food rules. So for example, I have actually recorded a podcast episode about what are my food rules and what are the things that I stick to the T. Of course, coffee, it's crazy. But I swear to like everyone that I will not drink 1 cup of coffee until I have eaten food. So I made sure that on Saturday, or my bad, Thursday we left. So Thursday we left, Thursday night we left, Friday we were there, Friday night we came back. So Saturday we were all at the house, or like we were at the house, and then Sunday we left to Minnesota for an NFL game. So basically our Thursday, Friday, and Sunday were a little wonky in regard of the food that we were eating, but let's go into it. So on Friday morning, I made sure I ate breakfast, mostly because we were gonna have a very active day, and I did not want to, number one, go out on an empty stomach. Number two, have caffeine on an empty stomach. Number three, I wanted to really make sure that I was going to be able to have as much protein in the breakfast time in case I wasn't able to have as much protein on the lunch or on the dinner. So we went out, we did the breakfast, right? If you were able to see it on Instagram, you kind of have an idea and a feel what it was. It was eggs. I put eggs, I put sausage, I put onions, I put peppers, I feel like I put some cheese. I feel like I'm missing a couple, but the only thing that we did not have source of was carbs, and we completely forgot. So, but as you can see, very big protein around, or very big breakfast around protein and fats. So we're really satisfied. Cup of coffee, we're good to go. So when we went to dinner, or we went to lunch, I don't know what you consider lunch and dinner, because technically it's lunch, but it's not like lunchtime that we usually eat. Our lunch is considered dinner time. So we went out. Of course, like I mentioned, my full intention was to eat and was to have those bucket nachos, because we've been thinking about that since the first day we've eaten them, and that was 3 years ago. So we were really happy about going into it. And something that my boyfriend and I love to do, we're very big foodies. We love to eat, we love to experience new foods, we love to experience new things that we've never tried before. So we really went into this anniversary dinner or slash lunch with it like an open mindset. Let's try new things, let's have fun with our food, right? So it was considered kind of like our anniversary dinner celebration. So naturally, I went for what I really wanted, which was the bucket nachos. And actually, they didn't have the bucket nachos. But we had their like different, or their new variation of the nachos, which were still really good, but they didn't have the bucket nachos. So then I ended up having a venison burger, because I've never had that, and I really wanted to try it. And once again, this, like, our intention into this dinner was, let's go try new things. So I went for the venison burger because it was like the most thing that attracted for me to have. And then we ended up basically kind of like wrapping up food there, because we did have a 4-hour drive back. And because you're not really moving and doing much stuff, you're not really like burning as many calories and stuff. So that kind of like kept me full, like pretty good. On Saturday, we like try to keep it up once again on, let's get back into schedule, fooding wise, like my breakfast, I did my regulars and stuff. And then for my lunch slash dinner, I try to keep it as how would I say, try to keep it as the path as aligned as I wanted it to go. We did have a lot of like leftovers, so I don't like personally to throw food away, so it was just kind of like a little mush of everything. But then on Sunday, once again, it was another event, or like another day of let's get up and going. On breakfast, we didn't have breakfast, but because we really had to wake up really, really early to go to the game. So what we ended up doing was stopping at a Dunkin', and I got myself like a sandwich before I was able to eat like, or before I drank like any coffee or anything like that. And then for our lunch/dinner, I kind of like chose for us to go to Qdoba because there wasn't really it was like drive-throughs or a sit-down type like pub/bar food, and I wasn't really, like I wasn't feeling it. So Qdoba, I love Qdoba because you can really customize it everything. So you already know the double protein, the veggies, all the good stuff. So that's kind of what I've been doing, or that's kind of what I did for the last half of last week, was really following and following a little bit more of my intuitive eating skills rather than my counting, tracking skills, and a little bit more of also those food rules that I have mentioned before. Because at this time when things like this occur, which will naturally always occur because we're living beings living a life, it's not always going to be black and white. It's really easy to fall into not only like temptation, but to also fall into the habit of, because if you're someone individual who is very prone of tracking calories and kind of like following something that directs you, okay, you need to eat this amount, you have this amount of protein left, let's hit it type thing. Once you go into this environment of more of intuitive eating, you haven't really built that relationship between yourself and food, not to the point of like non-self-awareness. That's not what I'm saying, but more in the aspect that you have to listen to yourself a little bit more, and you have to listen to your cues, your hunger cues, a little bit more, and be more in tune with your body rather than finding and following more of a food journal. So and then it flips, right? It goes vice versa. If you are someone who does like very good at intuitive eating, or is more prone of being an intuitive eater, and then you go into tracking calories, you're gonna feel either very lost because you're having to follow direct guidelines that you haven't been used to. So it kind of throws you off because you have to portion size, or you have to make sure that those portions align and match with the goals that you need to reach. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say restrictive, because it's not about restrictive, it's just a little bit more rigid in the tracking system. So if you are more prone to do either or, you're going to have a little struggle with the next one, or like with the different methodology. That's a little bit of what I found myself during this trip, that because I'm such a tracking calorie, that's a little bit of the system that I use. That's basically the system that I use right now. It's that I've going into more of a tracking calorie to into more of a intuitive eating, it did take me a little bit to readjust, and it did take me a little bit to, okay, this is what I need to be doing, and this is what I should be doing. And there's a couple errors, there's a couple mistakes, but it was really interesting to be able to see that part of it is just because of the skill set, right? If you were able to listen to the last episode on motivation, I talk about skill set and how it's not about motivation, or it's not about that you are unmotivated. It's the fact that you have not developed the skill set for that desired task, right? So that's a little bit of what I found myself. I'm like, okay, I was a little thrown off with oh my god, okay, I need to think this a little bit more, you know. It wasn't as simple as let me just log some food. So I follow a little bit of the intuitive eating, and now that I've kind of like gave you a little summary of what happened and what occurred for last week, I want to talk about like the actual science and the systems behind these both tracking systems. So with the tracking calories and the tracking macros, of course, as you can know or you can sense, is a very more rigid approach. You have certain amount of calories that you need to reach. You have certain amount of protein, carbs, fat, fiber, sugar. You have certain goals that you need to or you wish or you want to hit on a day-to-day basis. Where the intuitive eating is a little bit more freely. So with the intuitive eating, you don't have marks to reach, you don't have goal sets to achieve or have, but you have more of that mindfulness of this are the portion sizes that I should be having. This food content, I should be swapping it for more of this one instead. I should not be having this, I should be having this. So we're building more of a little bit more of a conscious. We're building more of a self-awareness with our around food. And that's why whenever a client comes to me, unless they have had a history behind tracking calories, tracking macros, unless they have a history, then we just go in straightly to intuitive eating first. I want to know what you're eating. I want to know how you're eating it. Because that is where we're actually starting to build the little self-awareness. That's where we start building the little building blocks into our nutrition, right? So that is something that I personally love to do as a coach and offer as my coaching kind of like strategy. So with this, with the tracking calories and with the if we're tracking calories, we're most likely tracking macros. So, but with this tracking system, right, we want to be measuring everything that we are eating and most likely measuring it with a food scale. I don't personally like to say to do it with measuring cups because depending on the food source, depending on the volume that it has, depending on the quantity, usually there's always some type of imperfection. Well, you can't really, it's never going to be perfect with the tracking, right? So I personally rather instead swap and change into tracking fully with a food scale. It's a much more accurate system. It's a much more easier approach and cleaner because you're not having to use so many measuring cups either. So I personally like to have this approach for whoever's tracking calories and counting macronutrients and stuff like that. In this system, you want to be tracking everything that you're eating, and that's included oils that you're cooking with, juices, any type of liquid, any type of sauces, any type of like barbecue, butter, all these little bitty things that we kind of sometimes take, I wouldn't say for granted, but sometimes we kind of don't understand or don't realize that they also are impacted, or our nutrition is also impacted by them, because they also contain energy, they also carry calories, they also have an impact to our body and our energy system. So that's something that we do it in a more experience level once we have built, like I told you, those building blocks into the system. And this is why I like to recommend to always start building the building blocks around nutrition, because another thing that I've noticed, and it's something that I know as a coach, is that many people come into nutrition thinking that it has to be more of kind of like all or nothing approach, but they don't realize that, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that life is not black and white, and it never goes as we always think it's gonna go. So by building the foundation around nutrition, it gives you a much more confident approach that you are being successful with your tracking system, you're being successful with the initiation of your nutrition journey, that is not going to be so overwhelming as, okay, I need to track all these calories, I need to do all these things, oh my god, I am so busy, I'm go, the last thing I want to do is take the food scale out, right? And these are, before we go even deeper, these both strategies, one is not better than the other. I'm not saying that counting calories is better than intuitive eating and vice versa. They all have a position and a place in our lives. Always. There has been moments in my life that I have strictly gone into intuitive eating, and usually those moments are when I am either needing to connect a little bit more with my body, or I'm needing to have a little bit more of a step back on the rigidity. And once I start counting calories or counting macros, that's usually when I'm going into this phase of my life where I'm a little bit more mindful and a little bit more rigid, a little bit more strict on the stuff that I'm eating, right? So neither is right or wrong. And with that train of thought, as we were following earlier, that everybody can do this tracking system. Sorry. Oh, anybody and everybody can go, oh my god, can go from one tracking system to the other. It's not that if you failed one, like if you tried it out tracking calories and you failed, you're prone to always fail in tracking calories, or you're prone and you are, I don't want to say unworthy, you are a person who just does not have that option for you. And then there's times where you are where it goes vice versa. So as I was saying earlier, that like life will catch up. Life is not black and white, and the thing that we want to be doing, and that's why it's so important about that building a foundation, is that when even life shows up and when even life catches you, because you have built such a solid and strong wall and foundation, whatever's thrown at you is just going to bounce back, because your wall has been built so strong with all the concrete, with all the building blocks, with all the stuff, that whatever's thrown at you, it's not going to impact you. It's not going to hit you as hard as you would think, because you took the time and the dedication to build this block. Now, I'll put an example of, like, let's say if your wall was made out of paper, or your wall was made out of straw, like whatever would be hit onto you, it would instantly impact you, and you would instantly fall into what we're seeing, like the temptation, or what we're seeing, like fall off the wagon, where you like were doing so good, and then something occurred that kind of like made you completely lose your path, and then you're starting all over again. And then we do see that a lot actually in today's society, where falling off the wagon has become a very known phrase to say when we're talking about fitness, health journey, nutrition journey, training journey, and all these things. Okay, so with the intuitive eating, is like we were speaking earlier, it's a little bit more of that mindfulness and openness. So that's when that's when I like to recommend about talking of those food rules. That's where food rules become a little bit more impactful, because you are not having to follow a tracking system that's telling you have this amount left. You're having to follow more blindly of what you are eating, because you are having kind of like the green card of you can eat whatever you want, not that in the other one you can't, but you do have like the openness of you can have whatever you want to have, with either moderation or with a little bit of limits. This gives you a little bit more of openness, right? But because you have these food rules that you have built, it does not allow you to take this tracking system into fuck it, I'm gonna do whatever I want type thing, right? So where these food rules, for example, my food rules, food first thing in the morning, high protein food or high protein breakfast, food before coffee or any type of caffeine, protein in whatever food source that I'm able to have, or like whatever meals that I'm having, food sources. If like Qdoba, double chicken, if I have the opportunity, or if you have the opportunity of upgrading to like have 2 servings of that chicken or 2 servings of the protein, perfect, double protein. Making sure that I am having carbs if we're able to have like carbs with a little bit more fiber. So that's where your food rules kind of like come into place. And this is a perfect opportunity if you are someone who does not do the tracking calories, tracking macros and stuff. That is completely fine. Like I told you, it's not a one or the other. Is whatever feels perfectly aligned with you at the moment. This is a perfect opportunity for you to take out your notebook or take out your phone. What are some food rules that are very, very important, not only for who you want to be or who you're trying to become, who you are becoming, but also the food rules that you are needing at the moment. Because one of the things with mindful eating, either if you're a beginner or if you're either an intermediate who in the phase that you're currently having, you're needing to do a little bit more of that mindfulness or a little bit more of that intuitive eating. We can, like I told you, this is an openness of kind of like more of a free-for-all, right? But if you have a desired goal, if you have a desired physique, a desired outcome that you want to have, and for you want to have align these food rules that to who that person is, right? So let me break this down and make it a little less confusing. So for example, if you're someone who's just starting and you are not tracking calories or macros, but you're wanting to do the intuitive eating, right? You're also hitting the gym, but you are not tracking how much protein intake you're having. Perfect food rules, and that's why I have this for actually. So perfect food rule that I have for my non-trackers, at least 2 scoops a day of protein powder if you're not someone who tends to eat a lot of protein in your day, right? And that is one food rule that you can follow like every day. 2 scoops of protein, and I at least know that I'm heading to, or I'm in a really good position, because the person that I want to become, or the person that I am becoming, she has a very strong physique. She has a very strong muscle physique. You can see her muscles. She has built this physique, and for me to allow myself to build this physique is by having adequate protein intake. But if I'm not tracking protein, I'm really not knowing where I'm at with my protein intake. So at least I know that 2 scoops each day with milk will give me at least, I think it will be at least 60 grams of protein in just one sitting, right? And we can make it more protein pack. Like you can add a little bit of Greek yogurt, even more protein based. You can divide them. So do like 1 scoop with milk in the morning, 1 scoop of milk with the nighttime, depending how your digestion is with dairy. But this is a perfect example of food rule of your food rule is designed for the person that you are becoming and building to be. That's going to help you with your current reality and the current person that you are. So with the intuitive eating, we all follow food. Or my bad, we all follow our body. We don't follow our food. We follow our body. So we follow what our body's saying, our hungry cues. Are we hungry? Are we not hungry? Are we just thirsty? Let me drink some water. Let me see where I'm at. With the intuitive eating, a lot of people have their negatives on each side. With the tracking system, the calories, there's a lot of negativity where it's too rigid. It does not give you freedom. It does not allow you to eat more if you're hungry. It is very kind of like close-minded. With the intuitive eating, there's the negative too. Realistically, you don't know how much you're eating, so you could be either eating super high calories one day and super low calories in the other, because you might be hungry. If you're someone who has a very busy schedule, and you do follow more the intuitive eating, you can find yourself that you are maybe not eating at all on a day-to-day basis because you are very busy, and the last thing that your body has the capability to do is to process hunger cues into your brain for you to realize, oh my god, it is 2 p.m. and I have not had anything to eat all day. So it's with the intuitive eating, with the intuitive and with the tracking, they both have their benefits, but they all have their negatives as well. So that's why I mentioned that with these, it truly depends on how you are feeling at the moment and what feels aligned for you to do. Because now that we're going more and more deep into it, is tracking calories and tracking macronutrients, it's not something that I have planned for myself or for even my clients to do their entire life. At some point, we are much more than tracking calories and macros on a day-to-day basis. And if you're telling me that I'm going to be tracking calories from till the day I die, I'm going to tell you no. So with the intuitive eating, it does build us kind of like that foundation, because at some point we are going to erase MyFitnessPal from our phone and never download it again. And we do want to have a strong foundation where we have our food rules that we can follow without any doubt. These are things that I'm following, no questions asked, right? And once again, with both, there's always going to be down days. There's always going to be a day that you didn't eat what you know you should have, and you ate the entire opposite of that. There's going to be days that you feel guilty. There's going to be days that you are eating and you are still hungry and you have no idea why, but you need to fulfill that hunger cue, even though it seems like you're eating more and more and more. And then you're asking yourself, am I gaining fat? Am I gaining fat by eating? Then you're gonna, like, there's always gonna be some days that it seems that you are doing the worst thing that you can ever possibly do for you and your system. And that's okay. Not saying that you have to experience that, or not saying that you should experience that, but I think that during those times are very foundational moments where we learn what we still need to work around, and where we learn what we still need to improve and do. Most importantly, to be that person that we are set in stone of becoming, or we are set in stone of wanting to be. So if you are tracking calories and counting calories, I still recommend for you to join and do your food rules, finish it up. Make sure you have your guidelines, because in moments like I mentioned, where this trip, there's going to be times that you are unfortunately not going to be able to rely onto your tracking system. So if you're not having the opportunity to rely on it, it's much better to be prepared than rather be blindfolded and just kind of free falling to whatever the world is bringing us, right? So that's a little bit of what I have the comment for intuitive eating and tracking calories. As I mentioned, tracking calories, it's a little bit more of that rigidity tracking system of what we are eating. It allows us to actually accurately know how much we're eating, how much it's coming into our body. It also allows us to play around with how much energy is coming in, how much energy is coming out. We're able to play around losing body fat if that's the physique that you're wanting to, gain muscle mass, etc. And for this tracking system, it's more of a, these are your marks, we need to hit them on a day-to-day basis, and if it's not being hit, then maybe there's something that we need to rearrange and fix on. Where the intuitive eating, we're following more of our own health, or not health, or with our own body signals. We follow our hunger cues. We follow a little bit more of our food desires as well. If we're looking for someone or something, like for example on dinner, ooh, I'm really, really craving a pasta. So you have a little bit more of that openness of eating the pasta, where in the tracking system of counting calories and macros, if your carbs are a little bit over, it might not give you the possibility to eat pasta for dinner, even if you are desiring, or even if you're wanting to have it. So that's a little bit about, once again, a benefit for one, downfall for the other. It also allows us to have a little bit more freedom into it, and building, like I mentioned, building the foundational wall of our nutrition habits in our nutrition or slash food rules. It allows us to build those blocks. And if you haven't, I highly recommend for you to start building your food rules. It's something that I just recommend so much, because it's so good, and it can be so individualized. It can be so individualized, because my weaknesses I want to say in food, like my food weaknesses can actually be your food strength, and your food strengths can be actually, and your weaknesses can actually be my food strengths. So it is very individualized, and that's the beauty of it, because my food rules will not and could not help you, and that's okay. It is exactly what you and your system is needing for these food rules, and that's why I think it's beautiful. To wrap up a little bit with more of intuitive eating. With the intuitive eating, we are, as I mentioned, we're following a little bit more of ourselves and our system. It gives us a little bit more of openness and freedom, and also creativity into the kitchen. It allows us to get a little bit more creative, builds a little bit more of a meal, rather than with the other one that we can kind of like follow. We have to follow certain guidelines. But both tracking systems are great. They're beautiful. As I said, if you feel that you're in one and you desire to be in the other, but it's very hard, then I highly recommend for you to rewatch or re-listen the last episode on the podcast, because I talk about skill set, and I think we could go a little bit into it, that there are only flaws, and the only reason why you haven't achieved or you are not able to accomplish the thing that you're wanting is because of your skill set. So it's the same thing as, for example, someone telling me to give them or resolve them a super complicated equation. I don't have the skill set or the knowledge around that, right? So I would have to start from zero, learn little by little these things that are going to allow me to come to the result of this equation. So if you're feeling that you're in this position where you're wanting to do all these things, but it's like, holy cow, like, skill set, if you are not, it's not, or if you're not able to accomplish it, it's not about hating yourself, and it's not about down talking to yourself or downplaying yourself. It's about the fact that we have not built a skill set yet, and there's a system for that. There's a specific path for that I help my clients with to do it, but it's not, you're not doomed, or you're not basically that you're not doomed to never be able to ever do this in your life, believe me. But I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. I think it was a really good, knowledgeable conversation about the intuitive versus tracking system. If I didn't answer a specific question that you had in mind for this topic, or if something came up as I was speaking, please message me at _wildsidefitness, and I'm more than happy to reply and help you build anything that you need to build around your knowledge around nutrition. Remember, next week we're going to be talking about unhinged questions, and you're going to be asking, so make sure you're on the lookout on Instagram for when I release the Q&A box for you to have. And until then, continue breaking those stereotypes. I will see you in the next episode.